If I had known that a single question would flip our entire world upside down, I might have paused before answering. We were in bed, just the two of us, dim light pouring in through the slats in our blinds, the ceiling fan spinning lazy circles above us. It was one of those rare nights where neither of us was distracted by phones, work, or the kids. We'd been married 7 years, and in that moment, things actually felt still. Not happy, not sad, just still. That's when Hannah turned to me, eyes searching mine like she was hunting for a buried secret. "Can I ask you something without you getting angry? That's how you know it's going to be bad." No one ever asks that before telling you they've scheduled a spa day or found your missing favorite hoodie. I swallowed the first reaction, the one that said "what now?" and nodded. "What would you think about trying something new?" she asked, her fingers tracing idle shapes on my chest. I raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" She hesitated. "I've been reading, listening to podcasts. You know how we've both been kind of stuck, like something's missing." There was a flicker of something in her eyes. Guilt? Excitement? I was thinking, maybe we try opening our marriage. I laughed. I thought she was joking, but her face stayed stone still, eyes locked onto mine. My smile faltered. "I'm serious," she said quietly. "Just hear me out." The room got cold. Or maybe it was me, because in that moment, something cracked beneath my ribs. "You want to sleep with other people? It's not just about sex," she said quickly. "It's about freedom. Exploration. We've been together since college, and I love you, I do, but I feel like I never got to figure out who I was outside of us." "You want to fuck other people to find yourself?" I shot back, more bitter than I meant to sound. She flinched. "I'm not asking for a divorce. I'm asking for honesty, for a chance to breathe." That phrase, a chance to breathe, it sat heavy in the pit of my stomach, like she'd been holding her breath our entire marriage. I should have said no. Should have asked why she didn't feel free inside our life. I built so much around making her happy. Our home, our routines, my own compromises, and now I realized maybe none of it was what she wanted. We sat in silence for a long time. Eventually, I got out of bed and walked to the kitchen, poured a whiskey, and stood in the dark. My phone buzzed. A project manager needed blueprints by morning. Real life, still humming along while mine froze. Hannah didn't bring it up again for a few days. But when she did, she came with articles, books, couples she followed online. People claiming open marriages saved their love lives, revived trust, rewired their relationships into something stronger. She'd done her research, and I, like the fool I was, tried to play supportive husband. "If we're doing this," I said one night, "we do it with rules." She nodded like she'd been waiting for that. We laid them out. No friends. No neighbors. No one who'd ever seen our kids. Full transparency. Protection, always. And we'd talk, really talk, every step of the way. What I didn't know then, what no podcast or article warned me about, was that you can't put boundaries around emotion. You can't script pain out of the process. The first time she left the house in a red dress I hadn't seen before, I sat on the couch and felt like the air had been ripped from the room. She texted me hours later. It was good. Safe. He was kind. I wanted to puke. The next day, she hummed while pouring coffee, her eyes brighter than they'd been in years. She didn't touch me that night, or the next. Suddenly, my wife, the woman I'd shared every secret with, built a life around, was someone I didn't recognize. She was glowing, yes. Free, maybe. But it felt like I was watching her walk out of a cage that I hadn't known was even locked. And I was left inside. Weeks passed. She went on dates. She came back smelling like cologne that wasn't mine. We didn't talk about it. Not really. I played along. I smiled. I told myself it would bring us closer eventually. But in truth, I was drowning. One night, unable to sleep, I ended up scrolling aimlessly through a local neighborhood forum. A post popped up about a community barbecue, a casual event. Bring something to share. I didn't know then that would be the night I met Vanessa. That would be my beginning, and the start of everything else unraveling. There's something deceptive about summer barbecues in suburbia. The smell of grilled meat, the sound of kids chasing each other through sprinklers, the clink of ice cubes in red plastic cups. It all feels so wholesome, so ordinary, like nothing could possibly go wrong under a string of patio lights. But desire doesn't care about appearances. And secrets? They love the smell of sunscreen and slow-burning charcoal. It was a Saturday, early June, and I remember the heat shimmering off the pavement as I carried a bowl of pasta salad across our front yard. Hannah had already left the house hours earlier, claiming she needed me time, which was becoming more common. I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. Not today. Greg and Vanessa had invited half the neighborhood. They were the kind of couple who knew everyone's birthday, organized holiday parties, and always had a fully stocked bar cart that screamed, "We entertain." Greg was loud, a bit too alpha for my taste. Always talking over people, slapping backs, boasting about his car or his next fitness goal. Vanessa, on the other hand, was a different story entirely. She was beautiful in that quiet way that sneaks up on you. Slim but soft, brown eyes that seemed to hold more than they revealed. Her dark hair was always tied back in a low bun, the kind that made her neck look long, elegant. She rarely said much at these gatherings, usually lingering at the edge of conversations, laughing politely, eyes scanning, not rudely, just observant. Until that day, we hadn't exchanged more than pleasantries. A few neighborly hellos, the occasional wave from across the street. But something shifted that afternoon. I just set my salad down when I heard her voice behind me. Soft, low. "Did you make that yourself? Or are you passing off Costco as your own?" I turned to see her standing there with a mischievous grin and a drink in hand, her sundress catching the breeze just enough to pull my attention somewhere it shouldn't have gone. I smirked. What if I told you I cut the basil myself and hand-zest the lemon? I'd say you were lying, but I'd also be impressed you know how to zest anything. Fair, I laughed. I'm James, by the way. I know. You live 3 houses down. I'm Vanessa. I already knew her name, of course, but hearing it from her lips felt like something more intimate. We ended up in 2 lawn chairs near the edge of the backyard, just far enough from the kids and Greg's booming voice. The shade from the oak tree above us filtered the light, casting golden patterns on her bare legs, and I was ashamed at how often my eyes drifted toward them. Our conversation slipped into that effortless rhythm that happens when 2 people feel like they've known each other longer than they actually have. She asked me about my work. I told her about my design firm, how I'd started it in my 20s, thinking I'd change the world one building at a time, and now spent most days fighting clients over countertop materials and budget cuts. She smiled. Still sounds more interesting than arguing with Greg about whether the garage needs a second fridge for beer. That was the first time she hinted at it, that her marriage wasn't as picture-perfect as it seemed from the outside. We talked about books, music, the weird way our neighborhood had 3 couples named Dave. We talked for hours, and not once did I check my phone. Eventually, people began heading home. The sun dipped low, painting everything in hues of burnt orange and blush. Greg had disappeared inside to put something on the game, and Vanessa stood slowly, brushing invisible grass from her thighs. "Well," she said, tilting her head toward her house. "Thanks for the conversation. It was unexpected." "Yeah," I said, standing too. "It was." We lingered there just a breath too long, and in that breath, something unspoken passed between us. Curiosity, recognition, hunger. She didn't touch me, didn't flirt outright, but the tension between us was real, humming under our skin like static electricity waiting for a spark. That night, I lay in bed alone. Hannah hadn't come home yet, and I didn't text her. I stared at the ceiling fans spinning above me, thinking about brown eyes and sun-dappled legs, about quiet laughter and the way Vanessa had looked at me like I was more than invisible. I didn't kiss her. I didn't touch her. But for the first time in a long time, I wanted to. I want to be seen, desired, chosen. And somewhere deep down, I knew that today wasn't the last time I'd be alone with Vanessa. It was only the beginning. The first time I touched Vanessa, it wasn't sexual. Not technically. It was Tuesday, late afternoon. Hannah had told me she was seeing someone new. Her exact words, like she was updating me on a new hairstyle or podcast. She didn't give details, just mentioned it over dinner like it was weather. "I think I really like him," she said, slicing into a piece of grilled salmon. And just like that, I stopped tasting anything. I nodded numb, forced a half-smile for the kids, pretended like I gave a damn about Max's science project. But later that night, after the kids had gone to bed, I sat in the backyard in the dark, a glass of bourbon sweating in my hand, and felt that old familiar tightness in my chest, the one that came every time I imagined her in someone else's bed. I didn't sleep much, and by morning, I knew I couldn't sit inside that tension anymore. So I mowed the lawn. It sounds ridiculous, but there's something about the loud hum of the mower, the mechanical back and forth of neat rows being cut. It's control. Predictable. Therapeutic in its own small way. I needed that. I was halfway through when I noticed Vanessa standing at the edge of her driveway, arms crossed over her chest, watching. She wore a long tank top and yoga pants, no makeup, hair tied messily on top of her head. She looked tired but beautiful in that real, undone way that hit me like a punch to the gut. I killed the mower, wiped my forehead with my arm. "Hey," she called out, walking toward the fence. "Hey," I replied, trying to keep my tone casual, like I hadn't been playing that brief barbecue conversation in my head on a loop for 3 days. She tilted her head. "You all right? You looked like you were attacking the lawn." I huffed out a dry laugh. "Yeah, well, it needed it." There was a silence between us, loaded, familiar. Then she said, "Greg's out of town. Work thing." My eyes flicked toward her front door. "You okay?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Just tired of pretending, I guess." She didn't explain. She didn't have to. I knew what she meant. Pretending things were fine. Pretending the marriage worked. Pretending to be the perfect wife, the perfect neighbor, the perfect fucking hostess. I knew that exhaustion intimately. She looked at me then, really looked. Her eyes lingered on my face a beat too long, and when she finally turned to leave, she paused. "You want some coffee?" she asked, almost as an afterthought. I didn't hesitate. Inside her house, everything was warm with tones and muted grays. Lived in, but not messy. I followed her to the kitchen, watched as she moved confidently between cupboards, brewing a fresh pot. The air was thick with the scent of beans and something faintly floral. Her perfume. Maybe. She handed me a mug, her fingers brushing mine. That was the first touch. A spark. Innocent. But my body reacted instantly, tense shoulders, quickened breath. She felt it too. I saw it in the way her hand lingered, the way her eyes flicked to my mouth and then quickly away. We sat at the kitchen table, sipping slowly, letting conversation stretch and wander. At some point, it turned personal. She told me about Greg, about how he used to be different, attentive, passionate, even romantic. But somewhere between job promotions and gym schedules, he'd stopped seeing her, stopped listening. "He wants sex every night," she said softly, staring in her cup. "But he doesn't even look at me anymore." I swallowed hard. That's a shitty feeling. She glanced up at me, nodding. "You ever feel invisible in your own marriage?" "All the time," I said. "No hesitation." That was the moment. The crack. The opening. Our hands found each other again on the table. This time, she didn't pull away. There was no rush, no reckless dive into passion. Just a silence, so heavy it felt physical. Her thumb brushed over the back of my knuckles slowly, like she was memorizing the shape of me. We didn't kiss that day, but when I left, we both knew we would. The next week was chaos. Hannah's someone new became regular. She began coming home later, texting less. She wore perfume to yoga and lingerie I hadn't seen in months, just not for me. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want the answers. Instead, I found myself walking the dog past Vanessa's house more often, waiting for moments where we could share glances, stolen words across our driveways, brief touches that said "I see you" without saying anything at all. And then one night it happened. It started with a glass of wine on her back porch. The night air was warm, her legs tucked under her, one strap of her tank top slipping just off her shoulder. She was laughing at something I said when she reached across and laid her hand on my thigh. I looked at her. She looked back. And that was it. Our lips met slowly, softly, like a whisper. Her mouth tasted like red wine and need. My hand slid in her hair, pulling her closer, and she gasped softly into my mouth, something between relief and hunger. We didn't go inside. Not that night. But we broke the seal. The next day, I lied to Hannah for the first time in months. And it felt terrifyingly good. The first time I saw Vanessa cry, it wasn't because of me. It was a Thursday evening a week after that kiss on her porch. We hadn't slept together yet, not fully, but everything was leading there. Long touches, whispered words, texts that danced right on the edge of explicit. I knew what was coming, and I wanted it. Badly. That night, I got a message. Can you come over? Just for a bit. 10 minutes later, I was on her doorstep. She answered the door in a loose sweatshirt and shorts. No makeup, hair undone. Her eyes were puffy, lips swollen like she'd been chewing them raw. She looked vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen before, like someone holding herself together with twine and duct tape. I didn't know who else to call, she said. And then she stepped aside. I walked in, heart already braced for something worse than I expected. Vanessa's living room looked normal. Pillows fluffed, candles half melted, the faint scent of vanilla lingering in the air. But she didn't sit. She paced, arms crossed over her chest, fingers clenching her sleeves. It's Greg, she said finally. I stayed silent, waiting. He found messages on my iPad. Not ours, old ones. From a guy in my hometown. Years ago, before we moved here. I furrow my brow. And he lost it. Said I'd been hiding things from the start. That I never told him who I really was. I sat on the couch, motioning for her to join me. She stayed standing. It's more than just jealousy, she said. He's possessive, controlling. You mean abusive? She hesitated. Not like that. Not physically. But he keeps tabs on everything. Where I go, who I talk to, what I wear. He tracks my phone sometimes. He says it's for protection. My stomach turned. That word, protection, twisted into something sinister in his mouth. Vanessa, you don't have to put up with that. She finally sat beside me, her shoulder barely grazing mine. Her voice dropped to a whisper. It's not the first time he's accused me of cheating. He gets in these moods, and then he freezes me out for days. Or love bombs me, like nothing happened. Is that what this is? With us? I asked quietly. Just a rebellion? She turned to me, eyes fierce suddenly. No, this is different. And then she told me the truth. Before she met Greg, Vanessa had lived in a small town in Vermont, taught yoga, worked part-time at a boutique, dated a man named Ellis, a charming, married man who promised he'd leave his wife. The scandal hit their town like a bomb. She lost her job. Her family pulled away. Her reputation was destroyed. Greg was the one who helped me start over, she said. He took me away from it all, promised me a clean slate. And I was so damn grateful. I didn't question it when the control started creeping in. She looked down, twisting her fingers. I thought I owed him my loyalty, my silence. But lately, I feel like I'm disappearing. I reached over, took her hand. You're not disappearing. I see you. Her eyes shimmered. I wanted to kiss her, to pull her into my arms, and let our bodies say all the things words couldn't. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I let her lay her head on my shoulder and listen to her breathe. Eventually, she fell asleep like that, and I stayed. Not for sex, not for the thrill, but because, in that moment, Vanessa wasn't the neighbor with the teasing smiles or subtle flirtation. She was a woman unraveling, caught between the past and the person she was trying to become. And I was already too deep to walk away. The next morning, I woke up on her couch, my neck stiff, the gray light of dawn seeping in through the curtains. She stood in the kitchen in a robe, making coffee like we were an old couple in a routine. She looked at me, something unreadable in her expression. I told Greg I spent the night at Sarah's. He didn't even question it. I watched her for a moment. Are we okay? She smiled, soft and sad. We're not okay, but we're better than pretending. That was the day we stopped holding back. The moment the front door closed behind me that night, her hands were in my hair, my back against the wall, her mouth devouring mine like oxygen. She kissed me like she'd been starving. We didn't make it to the bedroom. Clothes hit the floor in a trail of desperation. Her shirt, my belt, her panties bunched around one ankle as I sank to my knees in the hallway, tasting her until she trembled against the wall, hands tangled in my hair, whispering my name like a plea. When I finally slid into her, the world disappeared. It wasn't rough. It wasn't slow. It was something in between, fierce, emotional, a collision of everything we'd been holding back for weeks. After, she lay on top of me, both of us breathless on the rug, our bodies slick with sweat, the air thick with sex, and something dangerously close to affection. She looked at me, eyes heavy-lidded and glowing. "Whatever happens," she murmured, "promise me you won't lie to me." I kissed her forehead. "I won't." But in the back of my mind, I felt the first whisper of a lie forming. Because I already knew this wasn't just an affair. It was a fuse, and something was about to explode. There's a distinct kind of high that comes with secret sex. It's not just the physical part, the hunger, the friction, the heat pressed against skin. It's the way your pulse quickens when you hear a knock at the door, the thrill of a text with no name attached, the quiet gasp of "not here" when your hands slide where they shouldn't. With Vanessa, it was all of that and more. It was necessary. Some mornings, she'd text me nothing but an ellipsis. And I'd know what she wanted. Not words, not promises, just me. Sometimes I'd sneak over when Greg was at the gym, when her front blinds were tilted just right, signaling me like a lighthouse. Other times, she'd slip into my house after Hannah had left on one of her overnight work trips. She'd come in quietly, with no makeup and wet hair, and she'd pull my shirt off before saying a single word. And we'd forget the world for an hour or two. But you can only play with fire so long before something burns. Greg noticed first. Not us. Not yet, but something. He came over one afternoon under the guise of borrowing a drill. His handshake was firm, his smile a little too practiced. He looked around my garage like he was casing the place, eyes landing on my workbench, then back to me. "You been busy?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, handing him the tool. "Lots of projects lately." His gaze lingered. "Vanessa's been busy too. Different lately. You noticed that?" I shrugged, heart ticking faster. "No more than usual." He said, a sound without meaning. But the look in his eyes told me everything. He was watching her. Watching me. Later, Vanessa confirmed it. Greg had started tracking her phone again, questioning her absences, asking what perfume she was wearing and who she was wearing it for. "He knows something's up," she said, sitting cross-legged on my bed, wrapped in only a sheet. "We should slow down," I said, though my hand was already tracing the curve of her thigh. She leaned in, her lips brushing my ear. "Or we stop pretending we can." And just like that, we didn't. Meanwhile, Hannah was unraveling too, but in a different way. Her freedom had taken a sharp turn into recklessness. New men, new outfits, new rules that bent around whatever mood she was in. One night she came home drunk, reeking of tequila and sweat, stumbling into the kitchen and giggling like a teenager. I helped her into bed, and when I tried to leave, she grabbed my wrist. "You don't touch me anymore," she whispered. Not even a little. I didn't answer, because how do you explain that your body's been claimed by someone else? The next morning, she was ice. We sat at the breakfast table, both sipping coffee in silence, avoiding eye contact like strangers in a waiting room. Then she said, "His name's Chase." I blinked. "Who?" "The guy I've been seeing. He's 28. Tattoos. Drives a bike." "Great," I muttered. "He made me feel things I haven't felt since I was 22, she said. Then added with a smile, "You know what that means, right?" Yeah, I knew. She wanted to hurt me. But the truth was, I didn't feel much. Not anymore. Her words slid over me like oil on water. Because while she was chasing pleasure, I was falling into something far more dangerous. Connection. Vanessa, and I didn't say the word love. But it was everywhere. In the way she looked at me after we came, the way her fingers traced my spine like she was memorizing every vertebra. In the way I listened to her breathe when she fell asleep beside me, slower and safer than she ever sounded with Greg. But we were sloppy. One night, I came home late. Hannah was on the couch, wine in hand, an open laptop glowing beside her. "Where were you?" she asked, her tone casual. "Work ran late," I said automatically. She smiled, teeth showing. "Funny. I checked your calendar. No evening meetings." My heart stuttered. "Why would you check?" "Because I'm not an idiot." I said nothing. She leaned back, wine glass in hand, studying me like an exhibit. "You're seeing someone, aren't you?" I paused. "Are you?" She laughed bitterly. "Of course. But at least I don't lie about it." I didn't. "Don't bother," she said, standing. "You've been walking around like a ghost. Whoever she is, you already gave her everything." She didn't ask who. She didn't need to. And for a moment, I wondered if she already knew. Across the street, things were worse. Greg had become volatile. Vanessa told me he'd started snooping through her things, questioning why she wore makeup to the grocery store, why she took so long to get home. Once, he'd slammed a door so hard it cracked the wood near the hinges. "Come with me," I told her. "Leave him." But she shook her head. "I'm not ready. Not yet. You're scared. I should be." And I couldn't argue with that. We were in too deep. The affair wasn't just physical anymore. It was a lifeline. But lifelines fray, and secrets rot. And we both knew the truth was catching up. Because when you play with fire long enough, eventually someone gets burned. It was a Sunday when everything started to go to hell. Not with a bang, but with a phone call. I was at the kitchen table, coffee in hand, scrolling half-heartedly through emails, when I heard Hannah's voice echo from the living room. "No, Mom, I don't want to talk about church right now." My body stiffened. She only used that tone when her mother, the high priestess of moral superiority, called. "I'm not coming this week," she snapped. "No, it's not because of James. It's because I'm finally living, and if you can't handle that, maybe you're the one who needs to pray." Click. She tossed her phone on the couch and walked right past me toward the back patio. No eye contact. No acknowledgement. She'd been unraveling faster each week. Her makeup bolder, her outfits tighter, her social media suddenly flooded with motivational quotes about freedom, sexual energy, and finding your truth. There were also, notably, no pictures of me. Something had shifted. I waited a few minutes, then walked outside. Hannah was barefoot, pacing the patio, cigarette in hand, something she hadn't touched since college. She looked at me like I was an unwelcome ghost. "You told them, didn't you?" I asked. She exhaled slowly. "Told who what?" "Your parents. About us. The open marriage." She didn't answer, but her silence was confirmation. I ran a hand through my hair. "Why would you do that?" "Because I'm tired of pretending," she said sharply. "Tired of smiling through sermons and bowing my head while they talk about purity and sin like they didn't raise me in a fucking pressure cooker." "They're going to crucify you," I said quietly. "Good," she snapped. "Let them." That afternoon, the text started. From her sister. From her mother. From her father. The man who once gave me a handshake and told me I was a blessing. They all wanted the same thing, repentance. For her to come back to the light. For me to fix it. That night, Hannah didn't come home. She didn't text. She didn't even lie about it the next morning. Just walked in wearing a stranger's hoodie and red lipstick she hadn't bothered to clean off. "You're late," I said. "I know. Where were you?" She stared at me, blank-eyed, with Chase. And then a smirk. Twice. I stood up, the chair scraping hard against the floor. She didn't flinch. "Do you even care anymore?" I asked. "About you," she said. "Or about your image?" I stepped closer. "About us." She laughed. A hollow, humorless sound. "There is no us, James. There's the man who pretended to love me, and the woman who finally got tired of pretending." That hit harder than I expected. And then, her voice dropped low. "Besides, I know about Vanessa." The air left the room. "What? You think I don't notice how you suddenly take longer walks? How you come home smelling like sex and someone else's perfume?" She stepped forward, eyes narrowed. "You used to fuck me with your eyes. Now you look through me." I tried to respond, but nothing came out. "It's fine," she said. "We're both liars. But at least I don't try to act noble about it." She left again that night. But this time, it wasn't for Chase. It was to go home. To her real home, where her parents still lived, still judged, still believed their daughter was a shining example of Christian virtue. What she didn't expect was that her mother had already seen her tagged in a photo. A group shot, smiling, drink in hand, a man's arm slung loosely around her waist. Not mine. When she arrived, her father met her at the door with a Bible in one hand and disappointment written all over his face. The fallout came quick. Her mother called me the next day. "James," she said in that sickly sweet voice laced with judgment, "I don't know what's gotten into her. She says you both agreed to this? That she's free now? That this is healthy? She's not lying?" I said, my voice flat. There was a long pause. "You let her fall," she said. "You were supposed to lead her." Then came the worst part. Hannah's father called her a whore. Not in passing, not in anger, but calmly, like it was fact. You've let the devil in, he said. You've soiled everything we raised you to be. She called me from their driveway, sobbing. I don't know where to go, she whispered. Come home, I said. I don't know where that is anymore. She didn't come back that night. I told Vanessa everything. We were tangled up in sheets, still breathing heavy from a slow, aching round of sex that felt more like a plea than passion. She's breaking, I said. Vanessa lay on her side, hair falling across her face, eyes soft. And what about you? I blinked. What do you mean? You're breaking too, she whispered. You just hide it better. I didn't answer, because she was right. Later that week, Hannah came home. Silent. No fight left. She didn't speak to me for 3 days. She cooked for the kids, cleaned the kitchen, took long showers with the door locked. But she didn't say a single word until Thursday. That night, she stood at the foot of our bed, arms wrapped around herself. I think I want to stop. I looked up. Stop what? This. The open marriage. The pretending. The rebellion. You sure? She nodded. It didn't fix anything. It just broke me more. I nodded slowly. Okay. But in my gut, I knew it wasn't that simple. Because you can close a door, but the smoke always lingers. And some fires don't go out. They just burn quieter. I saw Greg the morning after Hannah, and I agreed to stop. I was pulling weeds by the fence when he came out to water his grass shirtless, a beer in one hand, even though it wasn't yet noon. His chest was puffed, tan, covered in the kind of muscle that comes from spending more time at the gym than with your wife. His eyes landed on me. He didn't wave, didn't smile, just stared. Something in me knew. He knew. But how much? Later that day, Vanessa texted. We need to talk. Now. I drove to her place, heart thumping harder than it should have. She met me at the door with that look, half fear, half guilt. He found the phone, she said. What phone? My old one. From before we moved here. I blinked. Why the hell was it still around? I kept it for photos. Old ones. And messages. What messages? Her silence was the answer. Vanessa. Ellis, she whispered. The guy from Vermont. They were saved in the cloud. Stupid, I know. At the time, it was my whole life. My stomach turned. And Greg saw everything. She nodded. Worse. He recognized the name. I swallowed. What name? Yours. She looked up at me, eyes already wet. I told Ellis about you once. Years ago. We were never physical back then. You were just my neighbor, just a crush, but I used to write about you. The way you'd wave when you brought in your trash cans. The way you held your daughter's hand. My breath caught. You wrote that to him? She nodded. I told him I wished I had met someone like you first. The room spun for a second. So now Greg knows I've been your fantasy since before we even moved here. I said. Her face crumpled. I never meant for him to find it. I forgot it was even there. Jesus, Vanessa. He knows, she said, voice cracking. Not just suspects, he knows. That night, things escalated. Greg came to my door. Not with fists, but with evidence. I opened to find him holding a printed photo, grainy, low light, taken from a car parked half a block away. It showed Vanessa and me on her porch. Her hand on my chest. My lips on hers. He said nothing. Just handed it to me and smiled like he'd won. Thought you should see it, he said. I stood in stunned silence. You know, he added, stepping closer, I always thought you were too quiet, too polite, like you were hiding something. He leaned in. Now I know. Then he turned and walked away. I stood there for a long time, heart pounding. This was it. Not suspicion. Not whispers. Proof. The fallout came fast. Vanessa's phone blew up the next day. Texts from neighbors, cryptic messages from mutual friends, even a post on the neighborhood forum about decency standards. Greg hadn't confronted her directly yet, but the message was clear. He'd gone public. She showed up at my house that night, trembling. I think he's going to blow everything up, she said. I pulled her inside. Then we talked to him. We deal with it. She shook her head. You don't know him. He won't scream. He'll wait. And then he'll burn your world down behind your back. She was right. Greg wasn't the kind to throw punches. He was the kind to plan. And then came the news I never expected. He filed a complaint, Vanessa said, eyes wide. To the HOA? To your clients. I stared at her. What kind of complaint? He said you're endangering the neighborhood. that you've been trespassing, that you're manipulating women. I laughed bitterly. Seriously? He included your name in emails to the city. And, James, he mentioned your kids. My stomach dropped. Now it wasn't just my marriage on the line. It was my reputation, my career, my family. I can fix this, I said, already reaching for my phone. But Vanessa grabbed my wrist. Wait, what? There's something else. My pulse thundered in my ears. What now? She hesitated too long. Vanessa. She swallowed. Ellis reached out. A week ago, before Greg found the phone. I stared at her. You didn't tell me? I didn't want to scare you. Or lose you. What did he say? She looked down. That he was moving here. To Denver. That he still thinks about me. I felt the betrayal like a slap. And did you respond? She didn't answer. That was enough. God damn it, Vanessa. I didn't do anything, she said quickly. But it's more complicated now. No shit. I turned away, pacing. This was spiraling. It wasn't just sex anymore. Not passion. Not rebellion. It was war. And I was running out of safe places to stand. That weekend, I took Hannah to dinner. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't even warm. But it was honest. She wore a black dress. No makeup. No armor. She looked tired. Like a mirror of myself. We sat in a corner booth. Candlelight flickering between us like a line we couldn't cross. I know about Vanessa, she said before the menus even arrived. I know about Chase. We were quiet for a while. Then she whispered, I'm sorry. It hit harder than I expected. So am I said. There was no venom in our voices. Just two people quietly accepting that the versions of ourselves we tried to build a life around were gone. After dinner, she didn't come home with me. And for the first time, I didn't ask her to. Across the street, Greg's house was quiet, but it felt like the eye of a storm. Vanessa and I hadn't spoken in days. Not out of anger, out of self-preservation. But I knew it couldn't stay that way for long. Secrets don't die in silence. They just grow louder. And Greg? He wasn't finished. He was just getting started. There's a sound that comes when your life starts cracking apart. It's not glass shattering. It's quieter, like drywall splitting behind the paint. A hollow pop of pressure giving way. That sound echoed inside my chest the morning I woke up to find my work inbox flooded with emails. Subject lines like, question regarding community ethics. Client concern. HOA issue. Neighborhood unrest. Greg had followed through. He'd sent a packet, a literal fucking packet, to my company's HR department, my largest local clients, and even the board of directors for the new zoning project I just started. He painted me as a manipulative predator, a man having sex with a married neighbor, while his own wife fell apart. The irony? He wasn't entirely wrong, but the spin was brutal. It was filled with vague accusations and no real proof, just tone, venom, and enough whispers to plant out. My phone buzzed. Vanessa, he went to my yoga studio. I think I'm going to lose my job. I called her. She didn't answer. I drove to her house. Greg's car was in the driveway. I left. We were toxic now. Our names linked in damage. Whatever we had, whatever beauty bloomed in those stolen hours, was now just evidence. Later that day, Hannah came home early. She didn't speak at first, just sat at the kitchen table, staring at her phone. Finally, she said, they've cut me off. Who? I asked, though I already knew. My parents. My sister. Everyone. She set the phone down. I saw the last message on the screen. Her mother's name. One sentence. You're not the daughter we raised. Hannah let out a quiet breath. Do you know what it's like being told your entire worth was built on purity? And then realizing you were never clean enough for them to begin with? I said nothing. Chase doesn't return my calls. Half the women at my job won't even make eye contact. I'm sorry, I murmured. Her eyes met mine. You started this. My chest tightened. You asked for it. I wanted freedom, not fire. I almost said I wanted the same. But the truth was, I'd set fire to everything. She stood up. We're not rebuilding this, are we? No, I said. Quiet. Honest. We're not. She didn't cry. She just nodded. That night, she slept in the guest room. I slept in our bed, but the sheets felt colder than ever. The neighborhood turned quickly. The first sign? The potluck invitation never arrived. The second? The way Mrs. Levin, 2 houses down, pulled her dog away from mine during our morning walk. No smile, no greeting, just eyes that saw everything. Someone, probably Greg, had started feeding the narrative that I was the snake in the garden, the married man sleeping with the neighbor's wife, while his own fell apart and clutched rosaries in public. If only they knew. If only they saw how mutual it all had been. How I'd spent the last 2 months trying to keep my sanity while Hannah chased highs and Vanessa chased safety, and I tried to hold on to whatever was left of myself. The truth didn't matter anymore. Only the story did. And in their version, I was the villain. Vanessa finally texted again. I can't keep doing this. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I didn't expect it, but because it still hurt. Even after everything. Me? Does this mean goodbye? Vanessa? I don't know. But it means I need to disappear for a while. Me? Are you safe? Vanessa? Not really. But I will be. I want to go to her. To hold her. Apologize. Touch her hair. Say the things I never said when we were too busy pretending it was just about sex. But it wasn't about sex. Not really. She was the first person in years who saw me. And I ruined her life. So I let her go. I let her vanish. Days passed. The neighborhood buzzed. I saw Greg at the mailbox. He gave me a slow nod, smug, like a man who'd just installed a guillotine in the front yard and invited the neighbors for wine and a viewing. The worst part? He still hadn't filed for divorce. Control wasn't about leaving Vanessa. It was about making her too scared to leave him. I almost confronted him, my fists clenched in my pockets. But I didn't, because now it wasn't about pride. It was about protection, not just for me, for her, for Hannah, for the kids, for anyone still clinging to the hope that this wasn't the end of everything. At night, I'd lie awake and think of how fast it all fell apart. One question, one open door, one kiss, and here I was alone, not married, not divorced, not loved, not hated, just floating, waiting, watching as the life I built was picked apart by people who had no idea what it felt like to be starved for affection, to ache, to crave connection so badly you'd risk everything just to feel someone breathe against your skin. The consequences weren't over. They were just beginning. But for now, I sat in silence, alone in the house I once called home, and waited for the next crack in the walls. Because I could already hear it, that soft, splitting sound of pressure behind the paint. It started with a knock on the door. Not frantic, not polite, just steady, deliberate, like whoever was on the other side knew I'd open it. I did, and there she was. Vanessa, hair down, eyes dark, wearing a black coat that made her look smaller than usual. Her face was pale, hollowed out by exhaustion and something I hadn't seen before. Resolve. Can I come in? She asked. I stepped aside. Of course. She walked past me like she'd done 100 times before. But this time, something felt different. Heavier. She wasn't here for stolen kisses or whispered apologies. She was here to finish something. She sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped tightly in her lap. I told Greg, she said. The air went still. You what? I told him I'm leaving, that I'm done being his prisoner. I stood there stunned. What did he say? He told me I was nothing without him, that I'd crawl back when reality hit. My jaw clenched. Jesus, Vanessa. I needed to tell you before it happens, she said, her voice tight. He's gonna make it ugly. He already started leaking shit online. He's trying to destroy you. I nodded slowly. He already has. She swallowed hard. I'm sorry. Before I could speak, another voice rang out from the hallway behind me. Is that her? I turned. Hannah. Hair wet, barefoot, wearing one of my old t-shirts like armor. Her arms were crossed, and her expression was unreadable. Vanessa stood quickly. Oh, she said. I didn't realize. You didn't realize I still lived here? Hannah cut in, walking slowly toward us. Or you just didn't care? Vanessa straightened her spine. I cared. More than you think. Oh, I'm sure, Hannah snapped. You cared a lot about sliding your tongue into my husband's mouth while our kids were asleep upstairs. Stop, I said, stepping between them. This isn't. Stay out of it, Hannah snapped, eyes locked on Vanessa. I want to hear her say it. Vanessa's voice trembled slightly. I never meant to hurt you. But you did, Hannah said, voice icy calm. You picked my husband. You watched me smile at you over potlucks and kids' birthday parties. You let me confide in you. You played me. Vanessa shook her head. No, It wasn't like that. Then tell me, Hannah said, stepping forward. Tell me how it was. I watched them, two women I'd loved in different ways, two halves of the same shattered story, finally face to face. Vanessa looked down, then up again, her voice quieter. It started before I meant for it to. But once it did, I didn't want to stop. And why him? Hannah asked. Why not someone single? Why not leave Greg first? Because James saw me, Vanessa whispered. Before Greg did. Before I even saw myself again. He didn't want to fix me. He just let me breathe. That silence again. Hannah's mouth twisted into a half smile, one filled with bitterness and heartbreak. You know what's funny? She said. I opened our marriage to feel seen, too. I thought maybe I'd find something real out there. Instead, I got a string of meaningless hookups and a husband who fell in love with our fucking neighbor. I didn't mean for it to happen, I said, voice low. She looked at me, eyes glassy. You never mean to. That's the problem with men like you. You stumble into women's lives and call it fate. But you never think about the mess you leave behind. Vanessa took a step forward. Hannah, if there's anything I can do. You can leave, Hannah said. That's what you can do. Vanessa froze, looked at me, and I knew. This was it. She wasn't asking me to stop her. She was saying goodbye. I hope you find peace, she said softly, turning to the door. Both of you. And then she was gone. Hannah sat down on the couch, rubbed her temples like she was trying to erase the memory. After a moment, she said, I don't hate her. I looked at her, surprised. I envy her, she continued, for being brave enough to leave, for being brave enough to love someone when everything said she shouldn't. He sat beside her. Do you hate me? She looked at me for a long time, then shook her head. No, but I don't love you either. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Fair. We didn't fail because of Vanessa, she said. We failed because we stopped seeing each other long before that. I think you're right. She exhaled slowly. So now what? I don't know, I said. Maybe we just stop trying to fix what's already broken. She nodded, then stood. I'm going to go stay at my sister's for a while, she said. Sort things out. Figure out who I am when I'm not someone's wife. I stood too. You deserve that. She smiled. Just a little. So do you. Then she walked out of the house. Not slamming the door. Not storming off. Just leaving. Quietly. Like a ghost slipping into daylight. That night, I sat on the porch with a glass of bourbon and no one beside me. No Hannah. No Vanessa. Just silence. And for the first time in months, I let myself feel everything: grief, guilt, relief, loneliness, longing. I wasn't sure what came next, but I knew one thing. The reckoning was over. And now came the rebuilding. The house was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that feels lonely. More like a peace you earn. Like a breath held too long. Finally exhaled. It had been 3 weeks since Hannah left. She packed light. Just a few bags, her favorite books, the framed photo of the kids from the beach trip we took before things fell apart. The rest, she said she'd figure out later. I need space, she told me that last morning. To think, to feel something real again. I didn't fight it. I didn't beg, because I knew space was the only honest gift I had left to give her. We hugged briefly. It didn't feel like the end of love. It felt like the end of the illusion that love could carry everything on its own. Then she drove away. No drama. No tears. Just dust in the morning sun. The kids didn't understand at first. We told them the truth, or a version of it. Mom and Dad are taking some time. We still love you. That will never change. And it's true. If there was one thing that survived all of this, it was our love for them. In a weird way, they became our final common ground. A reminder that not everything we built was a failure. They started adapting. Kids do. They asked fewer questions. They laughed again. And slowly, so did I. Work stabilized. Greg's smear campaign fizzled out. No real evidence, just a lot of loud noise. Vanessa didn't return to the neighborhood. Her house went up for sale 2 weeks after she left. A clean for sale sign staked into the grass like a gravestone. I never saw her again. No Bouvier. No Finalquis. No Clocher. Just gone. At first, it tore something inside me. But over time, I realized that maybe some stories don't need epilogues. Maybe the love we find in chaos doesn't need to last to mean something. She mattered. We mattered. even if the ending was silence. I spent a lot of time alone in those first few weeks. Walked the dog, cooked for myself, sat on the back porch with a drink, and let the wind carry away the ghosts. I also started writing. Nothing fancy, just thoughts, fragments, feelings. I wrote about Hannah, about Vanessa, about the version of me I lost somewhere between being a provider, a husband, a neighbor. And slowly, I started to see the man underneath all of it. Flawed, but still standing, still wanting, still capable of something honest. Hannah called last week, just to talk. She sounded lighter. Not fixed, just better. She told me she's seeing a therapist, that she's learning how much of her identity was built around being good. A good daughter, a good wife, a good woman, and how little that version of her ever really felt free. I thought I wanted permission to live, she said, but what I needed was permission to change. I told her I understood, because I did. We talked about the kids, about co-parenting, about maybe one day meeting for coffee, not to rekindle, but to reconnect. Maybe we weren't meant to be forever, she said. Maybe we were just meant to get each other to the next chapter. I think she's right. I don't know if I believe in soulmates anymore, but I do believe in timing, in chemistry, in the way two people can find each other in the middle of a storm and still carve out something real. What Vanessa and I had, it was fire. It burned hot, bright, dangerous. But some fires are meant to warm you for a season, not carry you through the winter. She reminded me I was still alive, still wanted, still human. And for that, I'll always be grateful, even if she's gone. So where am I now? Here, still in this house, still raising my kids, still figuring it out one morning at a time. I'm not dating yet. I'm not chasing. For the first time in years, I'm okay just being. I cook more. I sleep better. I'm rebuilding, not what I had before, but something new, something honest, something mine. Because freedom, I've learned, isn't about who you sleep with or how many doors are open. It's about truth. It's about knowing who you are when everything else has been stripped away. And in that quiet, you get to decide what comes next. If you're reading this and you're in the middle of your own unraveling, if your world is splitting open, just know this. You're not broken. You're just beginning. And sometimes, losing everything is the only way to find what's real. That's the end of the story, my friend, but not the end of me. Let me know if you want a reflection afterward, a summary of lessons, or even a bonus Where Are They Now? Epilogue. I'm here.